Welcome back to the channel. Before we begin tonight's chilling story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new horror tale. And I have a question for you. What city are you watching from? And what time is it there right now? Leave your answer in the comments below. I read your comments with great excitement, and I love seeing where everyone is watching from around the world. Now dim the lights, get comfortable, and let's begin tonight's terrifying story. The first time I heard my mother's voice come from that black car, I almost walked straight into the road. I don't mean it sounded kind of like her. I don't mean it had the same accent or the same tired softness she used when she was trying not to cry. I mean it was her, my mother, who lived 3 hours north of the city. My mother, who didn't know where I was. My mother, who hadn't called me by my childhood nickname since I was 12. Eli, the voice whispered from the open window. Baby, come here. I've been looking everywhere for you. At the time, I was 16, though I told people I was 18 because it made them ask fewer questions. I'd run away from home 2 weeks earlier after one of those fights that starts over nothing and becomes about everything. My stepdad, school, money, my attitude, my mother crying in the kitchen while pretending she wasn't. I left with a backpack, $38, a hoodie, and the kind of confidence only a stupid, hurt kid can have. For the first few nights, I slept behind a closed laundromat, then in the hallway of an apartment building until someone kicked me out. Eventually, I ended up under the Maple Street overpass, where the highway crossed above an old service road near the river. It wasn't safe. I knew that, but it was dry when it rained, and the concrete trapped a little warmth from the day. There were always sounds above me, tires humming, engines growling, the occasional semi making the whole structure shudder like a giant breathing in its sleep. There were 3 other people who stayed there regularly. A woman named Doreen who talked to herself and kept plastic bags tied around her shoes. A man everyone called Preacher, though I never heard him say anything religious. And an old homeless man named Walter. Walter was probably in his late 60s, maybe older. He had a gray beard, one cloudy eye, and hands that shook whenever he tried to light a cigarette. He kept his spot near the far pillar, where he'd made a little wall from flattened cardboard and broken pallets. He was the first person there who was decent to me. "You're too young to be down here," he told me my first night, without looking up from the can of beans he was eating cold. "I'm not that young," I said. Walter glanced at me once. "That's what young people always say." I didn't answer. He gave me an old wool blanket anyway. For the first couple nights, nothing strange happened. I was scared, sure, but mostly in the normal way. Every cough in the dark made me flinch. Every passing shadow looked like someone approaching. I slept with my backpack looped around my arm and my shoes on, ready to run. Then on the 4th night, Walter gave me the rule. It was a little after 11. The air smelled like rain, gasoline, and damp concrete. I was sitting with my back against a pillar, eating crackers from a gas station pack, when Walter shuffled over and lowered himself beside me. He didn't look drunk that night. That's what I remember. His face looked clear and serious. "Listen to me," he said. "Cars stop down here sometimes." I shrugged. "Yeah, I know." No, his voice got sharper. "Not those cars." I looked at him. He pointed toward the service road, the one that curved under the overpass and disappeared behind a chain-link fence covered in weeds. "After midnight," he said, "if a car stops there, don't look at it." I thought he was trying to scare me. Older street people did that sometimes. They liked testing new kids, seeing if you'd believe anything. "What happens if I look?" I asked. Walter's cloudy eye seemed to shine in the dark. "You'll hear something you want to hear," he said. "Then you'll go closer." I almost laughed. Almost. But his hand was gripping my sleeve so tightly that I felt his nails through the fabric. "Never look at the cars that stop after midnight," he said. "Especially the black one." I told myself Walter was confused. Maybe there was a dealer who came through. Maybe some creep picked up desperate people. Maybe the rule was just street wisdom wrapped in crazy words. Still, that night I didn't sleep. At 12:17, a car came. I heard it before I saw it. Not the rough engine of an old sedan or the deep rumble of a truck. This was smooth, quiet, expensive. Headlights slid across the wet pavement beneath the overpass, pale and slow. I turned my face toward the pillar before I could think. Walter was already awake across from me. "Don't," he said. The car rolled to a stop. Nobody spoke for a long moment. The highway above us kept rushing. Rain began ticking against the edge of the overpass. Then I heard the window lower, a soft electric hum, and then a voice said, "Mara?" Doreen made a sound beside her pile of bags. A tiny gasp. "Mara," the voice called again, gentle and patient. "It's me. Open your eyes." Doreen started crying. Walter got up faster than I thought an old man could move. He crossed to her and put both hands on her shoulders. "Don't look," he whispered. "That is not him." The voice from the car changed. It became deeper, warmer. "Mara, sweetheart, I'm sorry I left you." Doreen shook like she was freezing. I pressed my face into my knees. I wanted to look so badly it scared me. Not because the voice was calling me. It wasn't. But because not looking made the darkness behind my eyelids feel alive. After maybe a minute, the window hummed up. The car drove away. No one spoke afterward. Doreen cried herself to sleep. Walter sat awake until sunrise. The next morning, I asked him who Mara was. He looked at me for a long time before answering. "Her daughter," he said. "Dead 15 years. I wanted to leave after that. I really did. But leaving sounds easy when you have somewhere else to go. I had $6 left, no phone service, and too much pride to call my mom. So I stayed. The black car came every night after that. Always after midnight. Never at the exact same time. Sometimes 12:04. Sometimes 1:31. Once, almost 3 in the morning, when I'd convinced myself it wasn't coming. It was always clean. Too clean for that road. Black paint polished like oil. Windows tinted so dark they looked painted on. I never saw a license plate, though I tried once from the corner of my eye. The back of the car seemed blurred somehow, like my brain slid off it. And every night, it called a different name. Thomas. Preacher covered his ears and rocked back and forth. Linda. Walter stood up and stared at the ground until it left. Jason. A boy I'd never seen before, maybe 19, sat up from the shadows near the fence and whispered, "Dad." Walter yelled at him to lie down. The boy didn't listen. He stood slowly, like he was sleepwalking, and took 2 steps toward the car. Walter tackled him. They hit the pavement hard. The boy screamed and fought, crying that his father was there, that he could hear him, that Walter was crazy. The black car waited. That was the worst part. It didn't speed away. It didn't panic. It just sat there with the window down, patient as a spider. Finally, Walter dragged the boy behind a pillar and slapped him hard enough to shock him quiet. The voice stopped. The window rose. The car left. The boy was gone by morning. Maybe he ran somewhere safer. Maybe not. I never found out. After that, I started believing Walter. Not fully, not in a way I could explain, but enough that whenever midnight came, my body changed. My stomach tightened, my mouth dried. Every sound became sharp. I would stare at the cracks in the concrete and count my breaths. Then came the night it said my name. It had been colder than usual. December cold, the kind that made the concrete feel like it was stealing heat from your bones. I had wrapped myself in Walter's blanket and tucked my hands under my armpits, trying to stop shaking. Walter sat near me with a little battery radio pressed to his ear. It wasn't picking up anything except static. "You should call home," he said suddenly. I looked at him. "What? You heard me." I laughed under my breath. "You don't know anything about my home. I know kids don't come down here because things are good." That shut me up. He sighed and rubbed his bad eye with the heel of his hand. "Whatever happened," he said, "it ain't worse than this." I wanted to snap back. I wanted to tell him he didn't know my mother, didn't know my stepdad, didn't know the way it felt to be in a house where every room had a memory waiting to hurt you. But the truth was, I missed her. I missed the smell of her laundry detergent. I missed the way she hummed when she cooked. I missed hearing her keys in the door after work. I was thinking about that when the car arrived. The headlights slid under the overpass. Walter turned off the radio. "Eyes down," he said. The car stopped. The window lowered. For a moment, there was only rainwater dripping from the bridge. Then a voice whispered, "Eli?" My entire body went cold. Walter looked at me. "Don't," he said. The voice came again, closer somehow. "Eli, honey, it's Mom." My breath caught in my throat. It had her tiredness. Her exact tiredness. That soft break around the edges, like she'd been crying but didn't want me to know. "I'm not mad," she said. "Please, baby. Just come here so I can see you." I squeezed my eyes shut. Walter moved in front of me. "It knows what you want," he whispered. "That's all." "No," I said, but I barely made a sound. "Listen to me. She sounds scared." "Of course she does." My heart sank into my stomach as the car door clicked somewhere in the darkness, and I realized how badly I wanted to believe it. Not because I was stupid, because I was 16, because I was tired, because some part of me still thought if my mother found me, everything could go back to before. "Eli," the voice said, "I brought your blue coat. You always forget how cold you get." That broke me. I had a blue coat. I'd left it at home. No one under that overpass knew that. I opened my eyes. Walter grabbed my face in both hands and forced me to look at him. "Look at me," he said. "Not there. Me." But I could see the car reflected in his cloudy eye. Just a shape, a black shine, an open window, and inside that reflection something pale moved. I jerked away from him. "Mom!" I called. Walter cursed and tried to grab me again, but I was already standing. Everything felt slow. The rain, the traffic above, Walter's voice behind me begging now. "Eli, don't do this." The street looked ordinary, quiet, even comforting, but my gut told me something was off. I'd learned too late that danger often wears a familiar voice. I took one step toward the car, then another. The window was open halfway. I couldn't see anyone in the driver's seat. "Mom, come closer," she whispered. "I can't see you." I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling as I stepped off the curb. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. Then Walter slammed into me from behind. We both went down hard. My chin hit the pavement. Pain flashed through my jaw. I screamed at him. I actually screamed. "Get off me! She's there!" Walter pinned me with his whole weight, shaking so badly I could feel it through his coat. "No, she isn't," he said. "No, she isn't. No, she isn't." The voice from the car changed. It stopped sounding like my mother. For 1 second, it sounded like many people speaking at once, all whispering through the same mouth. "Walter," it said. He froze. The window lowered the rest of the way. I made the mistake of looking past his shoulder. There was nobody inside. No driver. No passenger. No shape behind the wheel. Just a dark interior that seemed deeper than a car should be. And then a face leaned into view from the back seat. I don't know how to describe it without sounding insane. It wasn't monstrous in the way movies show monsters. It was worse because it was almost normal. A woman's face, maybe. Pale. Calm. Empty eyes that didn't blink. But the features kept shifting slightly, like someone trying on different masks under skin. For half a second, it looked like my mother. Then it looked like Walter. Younger. Cleaner. Smiling. Walter made a sound I'll never forget. Not a scream. Something smaller. Like the air leaving him. The thing in the car smiled with his younger face. "Dad," it whispered. Walter went limp. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, to tell myself I had hit my head and imagined all of it. But the whisper of tires over wet pavement made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. The car door began to open. Walter snapped back all at once. "Run," he said. He shoved me so hard I stumbled backward. The door opened wider. A hand appeared around the edge. Long fingers. Pale knuckles. Too many joints, or maybe just bent wrong in the dark. Walter stood between me and the car. "Run." So I ran. I ran past the pillars, past Doreen screaming into her bags, past Preacher praying in a language I didn't recognize. My shoes slipped on mud. My lungs burned. I didn't stop until I reached the all-night gas station 2 blocks away. The clerk nearly locked the door when he saw me covered in dirt and blood, but I pounded on the glass and begged him to call the police. When the officers arrived, I told them there was an old man under the overpass who needed help. I didn't tell them about the voice, or the empty car, or the face. I said a driver had threatened us. I said Walter had stayed behind. They searched the overpass. The black car was gone. So was Walter. There was no blood, no sign of a fight, just his cardboard wall, his old blanket, and the little battery radio lying smashed near the curb. One officer asked if Walter maybe wandered off. I almost said yes because it was easier, because the truth sounded impossible. Then Doreen walked up behind him and said, very quietly, "No." He looked again. Nobody asked her what she meant. I called my mother that morning from the gas station phone. She cried so hard she couldn't speak at first. By sunset, she was there in her old gray Toyota, holding me like I was a little kid again. I went home. I wish I could say everything got better after that. Some things did. I finished school. I got a job. I'm 24 now, living in another state. I don't sleep near windows. I don't like parking lots at night. I still look away when a black car slows down beside me. My mother and I talk every Sunday. I never told her exactly what happened under the overpass. I only told her Walter saved my life. Last winter, I drove through that city for the first time in years. I didn't plan to go near Maple Street, but road work forced me onto a detour. By the time I realized where I was, the overpass was ahead of me. It looked smaller than I remembered, dirtier. Just concrete, graffiti, trash, and shadows. For a second, I thought about stopping, leaving flowers maybe, something stupid and human. Then I saw a figure standing near the far pillar. An old man in a torn coat, gray beard, one cloudy eye. He was facing the road, watching the passing cars. I slowed down before I could stop myself. He lifted one shaking hand, not waving, warning me. Then my radio cut to static, and through the speakers, in my mother's voice, someone whispered, "Eli, baby, don't drive away." Story 2. I used to think the worst sound in the world was rain on cardboard. Not thunder, not sirens, not somebody screaming 2 streets over and then stopping all at once. Rain on cardboard. It starts soft, almost harmless, like fingers tapping on a table. Then it gets heavier. The roof dips. The corners darken. The whole thing begins to breathe above you, sagging lower and lower, until you wake up with cold water on your face and your blanket stuck to your legs. That was my life in Portland when I was 43. My name is Elias. I wasn't always homeless. People always want a clean explanation for how someone ends up sleeping behind a laundromat or under a bus shelter. They want one mistake, one addiction, one bad choice. Something they can point at and say, well, that wouldn't happen to me. For me, it was a divorce, then losing my job at a warehouse, then my truck breaking down, then a week on a friend's couch that turned into him asking me to leave because his girlfriend didn't feel comfortable. After that, everything slid fast, faster than people think. By November, I was sleeping behind a closed furniture outlet near Division Street, under a crooked blue tarp I tied between a fence and an old delivery ramp. I had 2 backpacks, 1 pair of boots with a split sole, and a black permanent marker I used to write my name on anything I didn't want stolen. That marker is important. The first time I saw the shelter, it was raining so hard the streets looked like black glass. I had been walking for hours because my tarp had finally collapsed. My socks were soaked. My hands were numb. Every bus stop already had someone curled up in it, and the library security guard had stopped letting me sit inside after closing time. I remember standing under the awning of a closed nail salon, shaking so badly my teeth clicked together, when an older woman came limping down the sidewalk with a shopping cart covered in plastic bags. She stopped beside me and said, "You going to Haven House?" I thought I misheard her. "What? Haven House," she said, like everybody knew it. "Warm beds tonight. Soup too." I almost laughed. "There's no shelter around here." She looked at me with tired gray eyes. "Only opens when the rain is bad enough." That should have been the first red flag. But when you're freezing, warnings don't sound like warnings. They sound like help. I followed her 3 blocks east, then through an alley I was sure I'd passed 100 times before. It ran behind a row of shuttered shops. Dumpsters. Wet brick. A dead streetlight buzzing above us. At the end of the alley, where I was certain there had only ever been a chain-link fence, there was a door. A real door. Painted green. Brass handle. Warm yellow light glowing through a small square window. Above it was a wooden sign that read, Haven House. No one left out in the rain. I stopped walking. The woman noticed and smiled. First time? I nodded. Don't worry, she said. They're kind here. Inside, it smelled like tomato soup, laundry soap, and old wood. That smell nearly broke me. Not because it was strange, because it was normal. A young man at the front desk smiled when I came in. He wore a clean white shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbows, hair combed neatly to one side. Name? He asked. Elias. Last name? I hesitated. He smiled wider. First is enough. That felt nice at the time. He wrote my name in a big ledger with a red cover. Then he handed me a towel, a folded gray sweatshirt, and a laminated card with the number 18 printed on it. Bed 18. Soup until midnight. Lights dim at 1. The room was bigger than it looked from outside. Much bigger. Rows of cots stretched toward the back wall, each with a clean pillow and folded blanket. There were people everywhere, but it was quiet. Not church quiet, more like hospital waiting room quiet. Nobody argued. Nobody coughed too loud. Nobody watched your bag. It felt wrong how safe it felt. I sat at a long table and ate 2 bowls of soup while rain hammered the roof. The old woman who'd brought me there sat across from me. She said her name was Marcy. She had a soft voice and a laugh that came out like a cough. Don't get used to it, she told me. Place isn't always here. I looked toward the green door. What do you mean? She shrugged. Some nights there's just a fence. A man beside her, thin with a beard full of gray, muttered, Some places don't want to be found dry. Marcy gave him a look. Ignore Thomas. He likes sounding wise. Thomas didn't smile. That night I slept better than I had in months. No sirens. No rain dripping on my face. No hand reaching for my backpack. Just warmth. In the morning, the staff woke us gently. Coffee waited by the door. The young man from the desk thanked each person by name as we left. When I stepped outside, the rain had stopped. I turned back to look at the building. The green door was gone. So was the sign. There was only the chain-link fence, wet and rusted, exactly where I remembered it. I stood there staring until Marcy touched my elbow. Don't, she said. Don't what? Try to understand it. Just be grateful. For a while I was. The shelter came back 3 nights later during another storm. Same alley. Same green door. Same sign. The staff remembered my name. The soup was lentil that night. My bed was 18 again. But Marcy wasn't there. I asked Thomas about her. He frowned. Who? Marcy. Older lady. Cart with blue plastic bags. She brought me here. He shook his head. Never met her. I thought he was messing with me. People do that outside. They joke about things that aren't funny because if they stop laughing, they might start crying. But then I asked the man at the desk. Marcy checked in last time, I said. Did she leave early? His smile didn't move. We don't have anyone by that name. You wrote her in the ledger. I'm sorry, he said softly. You must be mistaken. I wanted to argue, but the room was warm and my hands had finally stopped hurting. So I told myself Marcy had given me a fake name. Or maybe she went somewhere else. Maybe Thomas really didn't remember. People disappear all the time when you live outside. That's the part nobody wants to say out loud. A week later, another man vanished. His name was Victor. He had a red knit hat and a nervous habit of tapping his spoon against the table before eating. I talked to him for maybe 20 minutes one night. He told me he used to fix copy machines. Told me he had a daughter in Salem he hadn't called in 2 years. The next morning, his cot was empty. His backpack was gone too. At breakfast, I asked if anyone had seen him leave. Blank faces. What red hat? Thomas asked. My heart sank a little. You sat next to him. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. He was right there. Thomas looked honestly confused. Not defensive. Not cruel. Just empty. That scared me more. That night, under an overpass, I took out my marker and wrote 2 names on the inside of my left forearm. Marcy. Victor. I stared at them in the weak glow from my phone until the battery died. The next time Haven House opened, I decided I would stay awake. I checked in like normal. The young man smiled like always, but his eyes flicked down to my arm. Just once. You've written on yourself, he said. I pulled my sleeve down. Bad memory. That happens here, he said. I didn't like the way he said it. I ate slowly. I watched the room. The staff moved quietly between tables, filling cups, folding blankets, touching shoulders. They were too gentle, too clean. Their shoes never squeaked on the wet floor. Their clothes never wrinkled. Around midnight, I saw an old man named Reggie talking to one of the staff women near the back hallway. Reggie had been around the neighborhood longer than me. He collected bottle caps and kept them in a peanut butter jar. He told everyone they were lucky. The staff woman leaned close and whispered something to him. Reggie smiled. Not happy, not amused, empty. Then he followed her down the hallway. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. 15. He didn't come back. I stood, pretending to stretch, and moved toward the hallway. That was when Thomas grabbed my wrist. His fingers were cold. Sit down, he whispered. You remember Reggie? I whispered back. His eyes filled with tears. For 1 second, I saw recognition there. Then his face loosened. Who's Reggie? He said. I pulled away from him. My pulse was pounding in my ears. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. I waited until the staff turned away. Then I slipped into the back hall. It was narrow and lit by yellow bulbs. The walls were covered in names. Thousands of them. Some written in pencil. Some scratched into paint. Some in marker. Some in childish handwriting. First names. Nicknames. Initials. Dates. Little drawings beside a few. Marcy was there. Victor was there. My knees almost gave out. At the far end of the hall, 2 staff members stood with buckets and white rags, washing names off the wall. Not scrubbing dirt. Washing names. Where the wet rag passed, the letters blurred and faded like they had never been there. One of them dipped his cloth into the bucket, wrung it out, and started wiping away Reggie. I backed up, but my shoulder hit the wall. The bucket stopped dripping. Both staff members turned. Their faces were still kind. That was the worst part. The young man from the desk stepped out of a doorway behind them. Elias, he said softly, you shouldn't be back here. I ran. Not bravely. Not smartly. I ran like an animal. I slammed through the main room, knocking over a chair. People looked up with sleepy confusion. Thomas stood, then sat back down like he had forgotten why he moved. The front door seemed farther away than before. The room stretched. The rows of cots blurred. My hands shook so badly I could barely grip the handle. My heart sank into my stomach as the door clicked shut behind me, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. Because when I pulled the door open, there was no alley outside. There was rain. Just rain. A wall of it, black and endless, falling into darkness. I stumbled back. The young man was walking toward me, slow and patient. No one leaves in the middle of the storm, he said. Behind him, the guests had all gone still. Every head turned toward me. Every face calm. Every eye empty. I looked down at my arm. The names were bleeding through my wet sleeve in black ink. Marcy, Victor, and beneath them, where I swear I had not written anything, another name had appeared. Elias. I don't remember deciding to break the window. There was a fire extinguisher mounted beside the door. I grabbed it and swung at the small square pane until the glass cracked. The sound made everyone in the room flinch at once. Not like people, like one body. I swung again. The glass shattered inward. Cold rain blasted my face. I climbed through, cutting my coat and tearing my sleeve, but I barely felt it. For half a second, I was hanging between warmth and storm. Then something grabbed my ankle. A hand. Smooth. Cold. Gentle. I kicked blindly and fell hard onto wet pavement. Real pavement. The alley was back. I crawled through a puddle, then got up and ran until my lungs burned. I didn't stop until I saw headlights, real headlights, and stumbled into the road waving my arms. A rideshare driver nearly hit me. He called 911 because he thought I was drunk or having some kind of breakdown. 2 officers came. I told them enough to sound crazy. Shelter. Green door. Missing people. Names on walls. They searched the alley. Of course, there was nothing. Just the fence. One officer, younger guy, tried to be kind about it. He gave me a bottle of water and said there were resources downtown. The other barely looked at me. I showed them my arm. The rain had washed most of the marker away. Only one name remained. Elias. I scrubbed it for days. Soap. Alcohol wipes. Gas station bathroom water, so cold it hurt. It faded, but it never fully disappeared. That was 2 years ago. I'm not on the street anymore. A church program helped me get into a room first, then a job washing dishes, then a tiny studio apartment above a pawn shop. It isn't much, but it has a lock, a heater, and a ceiling that doesn't sag when it rains. I still check alleys during storms. I still read every shelter sign twice. And I still keep that black marker in my drawer, even though it's dried out now. Last week, we had the worst rain of the year. I was walking home from work with my hood up, keeping close to the buildings, when I passed an alley I didn't recognize. That happens in the city. You think you know every street, then one opens up like a thought you forgot. At the end of it, warm yellow light glowed through a small square window. A green door. A wooden sign. No one left out in the rain. I stood there, soaked and shaking, unable to move. Then the door opened a crack. A young man in a clean white shirt looked out at me. He smiled like he'd been waiting. And from somewhere inside, soft and familiar, a woman's voice called my name. Elias, Marcy said. You came back. Story 3. The first thing I noticed was that nobody in that place ever looked up. Not at the sky, not at the mall roof, not at the streetlights humming over the empty parking lot. Everyone kept their eyes low, like they were afraid of being reminded there was still a world above them. My name is Caleb. I was 24 when this happened, living out of a backpack in Columbus, Ohio, during one of the worst winters of my life. I wasn't homeless because of drugs or some dramatic movie reason. I lost my job, fell behind on rent, burned through the patience of the 2 friends who let me crash on their couches, and eventually I ran out of people to call. For a while, I slept at bus stations, laundromats, and once in the stairwell of a parking garage until security found me and told me to leave. After enough nights outside, shame stops feeling sharp and turns into something dull. You stop thinking about who you used to be. You just think about socks, food, dry cardboard, and where you can sleep without getting kicked awake. That was how I found the people behind Westbridge Mall. The mall had been dead for years. Half the sign was missing, weeds had split the concrete, and the glass doors were boarded from the inside. Behind it, between the loading docks and a line of overgrown trees, was a hidden little camp made of tarps, plywood, broken furniture, and refrigerator boxes. A woman named Marcy found me digging through a dumpster behind a pizza place and asked if I needed somewhere warmer. You don't steal from us, she said. You don't bring cops around. You don't bother anyone sleeping. That's it. I followed her because I was too cold to be proud. At first, I thought it was kind of impressive. They called it Cardboard City, half as a joke, half like it was a real neighborhood. There were little walkways made from flattened boxes. Someone had dragged in a stained floral couch and put it under a blue tarp. There was a kitchen with milk crates, canned food, and a camping stove. People had made walls from shipping cartons and old store displays, taping them together with so much duct tape it looked almost intentional. There were maybe 18 people staying there when I arrived. Some older, some young, a couple who kept to themselves, and a man everyone called Bishop, who seemed to be in charge without ever saying he was. He had a gray beard, a limp, and a soft voice that made people listen. "You can take that corner," Bishop told me, pointing to a dry space near the back wall of the mall. "Don't sleep against the brick. Rats run there." I thanked him, and he nodded like he didn't want gratitude. That first night, I slept better than I had in weeks. The wind still hissed through the tarps, and I could hear traffic from the road, but I was out of sight. Nobody yelled at me. Nobody threatened to call the police. For the first time in a while, I felt like I could close my eyes without having to keep one hand on my backpack. The first weird thing happened the next morning. I woke up to people standing in silence near the east side of camp. Not talking, just staring at a wall of cardboard that I was sure hadn't been there the night before. It was tall, maybe 7 feet, built from clean brown boxes without any labels or water stains. That was strange by itself, because everything in Cardboard City looked used, softened by weather and dirt. This wall looked fresh, dry, perfectly folded at the edges. In the middle of it was a doorway. No door, just a dark rectangle cut into the cardboard, leading into a short little hallway made of the same clean boxes. I looked at Marcy. "Who built that?" She rubbed her arms like she was cold. "Nobody." Bishop came limping over, took one look, and said, "Don't go in." A younger guy named Trevor laughed. He was maybe 19, skinny, always smiling like he was trying to convince himself life was funny. "It's Cardboard Man," he said. "Not a haunted house." Bishop didn't smile. I said, "Don't go in." That should have been enough. But when you live outside, rules only matter if you understand why they exist. Trevor peeked inside, made a big show of waving his hand around, and said, "See? Nothing." The hallway couldn't have been longer than 6 feet. I could see darkness at the end, but it looked like a turn, not a wall. That bothered me. There shouldn't have been room for a turn. The hallway was built against the mall's rear wall. It should have ended at brick. I told myself my eyes were playing tricks on me. Cardboard bends. Shadows do weird things. I was tired, hungry. Half the time out there, your brain is running on fumes. Nobody went in that day. By the next morning, the hallway was longer. I know how that sounds. I know it sounds like something from a story someone tells around a fire. But I'm telling you what I saw. The doorway had shifted maybe 3 feet to the left. The wall had expanded. The hallway now stretched deep enough that a flashlight beam disappeared inside it. People argued about it after breakfast. "Somebody's messing with us," Marcy said. Trevor pointed at a man named Lou who collected scrap metal. "You've been building secret rooms now." Lou threw a plastic spoon at him. "I can barely build a sandwich." Bishop sat on a milk crate, staring at the opening. "Don't go in," he said again. This time nobody laughed. For 2 days we tried to ignore it. That was the thing about being desperate. You learn to ignore what doesn't immediately hurt you. A weird cardboard hallway wasn't as urgent as cold feet, empty stomachs, or police sweeps. But ignoring it didn't make it stop. Every morning, Cardboard City changed. A wall appeared beside the kitchen, making the walkway narrower. A row of old office chairs showed up in a place where there had only been weeds. A cardboard ceiling stretched over part of the camp, blocking out the sky. The strangest part was how clean everything was. No rain damage, no dirt, no bugs, just fresh cardboard, dry and warm to the touch. Then people started saying they heard things from inside. Not voices exactly, more like movement, a soft shifting sound, scraping, folding, like someone far away was building boxes in the dark. One night, I woke up because Trevor was standing over me. "Caleb," he whispered. I jerked up, grabbing my backpack. "What the hell?" He put a finger to his lips. His face looked pale in the weak light coming through the tarp. "Do you hear that?" At first, I heard only the wind. Then I heard it. Tap, slide, tap, from the doorway. It sounded like furniture being dragged across carpet. Trevor smiled, but it wasn't his usual smile. It was nervous, excited. "I think there's a whole other place down there," he whispered. "There is no down there," I said. "It's a mall wall." He didn't answer. He just kept staring toward the doorway. The next morning, Trevor was gone. His blankets were still there. His shoes were gone. His backpack was still tucked under his sleeping spot, which was how we knew something was wrong. Nobody left their backpack unless they planned on coming back. Marcy wanted to call someone. Bishop told her no. "And say what?" he asked. "A man walked into cardboard? He's missing," she snapped. Bishop looked older than he had the day before. Then we wait. Trevor came back after sunset. He walked out of the doorway while we were sitting around the camping stove, and everyone went dead quiet. He looked clean. That was the part that made my stomach turn. His jacket had no mud on it. His hair was combed flat. His face looked rested, almost peaceful, like he'd slept in a real bed. Marcy stood up. "Where were you?" Trevor looked at her, confused. "Here." "No, you weren't." He smiled gently. "I was inside." "Inside where?" He looked past us, up toward the tarps. "Not the sky. Never the sky. It's better in there," he said. Nobody spoke. Bishop got to his feet slowly. "What did you see?" Trevor blinked a few times. His smile stayed on, but his eyes emptied out. "I don't remember," he said. That night, Trevor slept sitting up, facing the doorway. After that, everything got worse. The camp started feeling less like a shelter and more like a maze. Paths changed. Boxes appeared where there had been open space. You'd wake up and have to duck under a new cardboard arch or step around a wall that hadn't existed when you went to sleep. It became harder to see the mall, harder to see the road, harder to see out. And Trevor kept trying to convince people to go inside. "It's warm," he told a woman named Dee. "No rain. No noise. You don't have to think so much." She told him to leave her alone, but I could tell she was tempted. We all were. Warm was powerful. Warm could make a person stupid. 3 more people went in over the next week. All 3 came back different. Quiet. Smiling. Clean. Unable to explain where they'd been. One man, who used to talk constantly about getting to Florida, came back and said, "I don't think there is a Florida." When Marcy asked what he meant, he just smiled wider. My fear became physical after that. It lived in my hands, in my neck, in the way my stomach tightened whenever the cardboard shifted at night. I wanted to leave, but leaving wasn't simple. I had nowhere else. And part of me kept doing what people do when they're scared of the truth. I negotiated with it. One more night, I told myself. Then it'll warm up. Then I'll go. Then I'll figure something out. The turning point came on a Thursday, because I remember the church van came that evening with soup and blankets. They parked near the front of the mall, not behind it. Usually someone from camp would go around and wave them over, but that night nobody moved. Everyone sat inside the cardboard walls like we were hiding from rescue. Marcy grabbed my sleeve. "We need to leave tonight," she whispered. I looked at her and saw she had already packed. Her whole life was in 2 grocery bags. Before I could answer, Bishop appeared beside us. "Heard you," he said. Marcy stiffened. "Then come with us." Bishop looked toward the doorway. It was bigger now, taller than a normal door. The cardboard around it pulsed slightly in the wind, except there was no wind. "I can't," he said. "Why not?" He swallowed. "Because I went in before." The cold that moved through me had nothing to do with the weather. Bishop sat down on the couch and rubbed his bad leg. "Years ago," he said quietly. "Before you. Before most of them. This place was smaller then. Just a few boxes by the dock. I thought someone had made a storage space. I went in looking for blankets." He looked at me. "It goes down," he said. "Don't ask me how. Don't ask me where. But it goes down. And the deeper you go, the less you remember what outside feels like." Marcy was crying without making sound. "What's down there?" I asked. Bishop's mouth opened, but for a second nothing came out. "Something that was thrown away," he said. "Something old. Hungry. Patient. It doesn't eat like an animal. It keeps you. Uses what people leave behind. Boxes. Plastic. Clothes. Voices. Names." Behind him, inside the doorway, I heard a soft scraping sound. Then a voice called from the dark. "Bishop." It sounded like an old woman. Bishop closed his eyes. Marcy grabbed my wrist so hard her nails dug into my skin. The voice came again, tender and tired. "Come home," Bishop whispered. "That's my mother." I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. Then Trevor stepped out of the doorway. Only it wasn't Trevor anymore. Not fully. His clothes hung wrong. His arms looked stiff at his sides. His smile was too calm. "Bishop," he said, "it's ready for you now." Bishop stood so fast the milk crate tipped over. "Run," he said. Marcy didn't need to hear it twice. She pulled me through a narrow gap between two cardboard walls, but the path that led to the loading dock was gone. In its place was another corridor. Fresh cardboard, clean edges, dark at the end. "No," Marcy whispered. "No, no, no." Behind us, people were waking up. Some crying, some laughing softly. Somewhere inside the maze, someone began humming a song I recognized from old grocery store speakers. We turned left, then right, pushing through hanging tarps, knocking over chairs. The walls seemed to lean inward. Cardboard brushed my shoulders. I could smell damp paper, dust, and something sour underneath, like wet laundry left too long in a basement. A doorway opened ahead of us. Not appeared. Opened. The cardboard folded back like a mouth. From inside came warm air. For one awful second, I wanted to step into it. That was the scariest part. Not the dark. Not Trevor. Not the voices. The feeling that it would be easier to stop fighting. Marcy slapped me hard across the face. "Move," she hissed. We found a gap near the old dumpsters. I shoved one aside, scraping my palms raw, and squeezed through first. My jacket snagged on a nail. I panicked and tore free, stumbling onto open pavement. The sky above me looked huge and black and real. Marcy climbed out behind me. Then something grabbed her bag. Not a hand. A strip of cardboard, folded tight around the handle, tugging from inside the gap. She screamed and let go. The bag vanished into the dark. We ran. My legs felt numb. My lungs burned. The street looked ordinary, quiet, even comforting, but my gut told me something was off. I'd learned too late that danger often wears a friendly face. We made it to the church van, just as it was pulling away. Marcy slammed both hands on the back doors, sobbing. The driver, a man in a red knit cap, jumped out and asked what happened. I tried to explain. I really did. I said people were trapped behind the mall. I said something was wrong. I said a man had gone missing and come back different. The driver looked scared, but not like he believed me. More like he thought I was having some kind of episode. Still, he called 911. 2 officers came 20 minutes later. By then, the camp was quiet. Too quiet. They walked behind the mall with flashlights while Marcy and I stood near the van wrapped in donated blankets. I remember my hands trembling so badly I spilled soup down the front of my coat. When the officers came back, one looked irritated. "There's nobody back there," he said. Marcy stared at him. "That's not possible. There's some trash, some boxes, old furniture. No people." "What about the hallway?" I asked. The officer frowned. "What hallway?" I made them take me back. The camp was gone. Not completely. There were still tarps, bottles, blankets, and scattered cardboard. But the walls were collapsed. The doorway was just a stack of wet boxes against the mall brick. No tunnel. No clean hallway. No Trevor. No Bishop. No one. Marcy fell to her knees and started saying names. The officers took a report, but I could tell they didn't know what to write. Missing persons are hard when the missing don't have steady addresses, phones, or families checking on them. By morning, it was already becoming one of those things people shrug at because caring would be inconvenient. Marcy and I left Columbus 2 days later. A shelter helped me get an ID again. Then a job washing dishes. Then a room in a house with 3 other guys. It took a long time, but I got back indoors. I haven't seen Marcy in years. Last I heard, she moved to Indiana and was doing okay. I wish I could say I moved on. But sometimes, behind grocery stores or apartment buildings, I see stacks of cardboard arranged a little too neatly. Clean boxes, dry edges, a narrow gap between them that looks darker than it should. And I feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling, as I fumble for my keys. Every second feels stretched, like time itself is conspiring against me. A few months ago, I was walking past a closed shopping center near where I live now. It was late, raining lightly, the kind of rain that makes the pavement shine. Behind one of the vacant stores, I noticed a cardboard wall tucked between two dumpsters. Fresh cardboard, no labels, no water stains. In the middle of it was a doorway. I stood there for maybe 5 seconds, unable to breathe. Then, from somewhere deep inside, a voice called my name. Not loud, not threatening, just gentle, like someone who had been waiting a long time. And the worst part is, for 1 second, before I ran, I thought it sounded like home. Story 4. The Soup Kitchen Guest. I used to think hunger was the saddest thing a person could bring through a door. I know that sounds naive now, but back then, hunger made sense to me. Hunger had a shape. Empty hands, tired eyes, a coat too thin for December. Someone looking at the floor because asking for help had rubbed all the pride out of them. What happened at St. Agnes didn't look like hunger. Not at first. My name is Marissa Vale. I was 28 when this happened, living in Cedar Falls, Iowa, working part-time at a pharmacy and volunteering 3 evenings a week at a small church soup kitchen downtown. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't some big nonprofit with cameras and donors and matching t-shirts. It was just a basement under an old brick church that smelled like bleach, wet coats, coffee, and whatever soup we had managed to stretch that day. Every evening, Monday through Friday, we served 50 bowls. Exactly 50. That wasn't some sacred rule. It was just math. We had one big industrial pot, donated bread, a box of fruit if we were lucky, and enough volunteers to keep things moving without chaos. 50 bowls meant nobody went completely unseen, but it also meant somebody always came too late. That was the part one hated. The first strange thing happened on a Thursday night in January. It had snowed earlier, that ugly gray snow that turns to slush the second it hits the curb. We had made chicken noodle soup, watered down more than I wanted to admit, and by 6:45 we were down to our last bowl. I remember because I was already cleaning ladles when the basement door opened. A man stepped inside. He didn't stomp snow off his shoes. He didn't shiver. He didn't look around like new people usually did, trying to figure out where to stand or whether they were welcome. He just came down the stairs slowly, one hand on the railing, like he'd been there every night of his life. He was maybe in his late 40s, maybe older. Thin, but not sickly. Pale in a way that looked almost gray under the fluorescent lights. He wore a brown coat buttoned to the neck, no scarf, no hat, and his hair was combed flat like he'd done it with water. Nobody spoke at first. Then Earl, one of our regulars, looked up from his bowl and smiled. "Hey," he said, like greeting an old friend. "You made it." That confused me because I knew Earl. He talked to everyone, sure, but he forgot faces constantly. He once introduced himself to me 3 times in the same week. The stranger gave him a small nod. Not a warm nod. Not rude either. Just the kind of nod you give when someone says exactly what they were supposed to say. I went to the pot and scraped out the last serving. It wasn't much. Mostly broth, a few noodles, one sad piece of carrot. "Here you go," I said, setting it on a tray. "We're almost out, but there's bread too." He looked at me then. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but something about his eyes made me freeze. They weren't scary in an obvious way. They were normal eyes. Brown, plain, even tired. But he didn't blink. Not once while I was talking. "Thank you, Marissa," he said. My hand tightened around the tray. I hadn't told him my name. Then I remembered my name tag. White sticker, black marker, stuck to my sweater. I told myself it was nothing. He took the tray and sat at the last table alone. He ate slowly. Spoon up, mouth open, spoon down. No blinking. No steam bothering his face. No glance toward the conversations around him. And yet everyone seemed calmer with him there. That was the second thing I noticed. The room softened somehow. People who usually argued over seats went quiet. A man named Patrick, who had been muttering angrily to himself all night, suddenly sat straighter and smiled like he'd just remembered good news. Even Denise, our lead volunteer, whispered, "Oh good, he came back," while stacking cups. I looked at her. "Who?" She frowned. "The man at the table. You know him?" Her mouth opened, then closed. A little crease formed between her eyebrows. "I think so," she said. "Don't I?" The stranger finished every drop of soup. Then he folded his napkin into a neat square, placed it beside the bowl, and left without saying goodbye. The basement door clicked shut behind him. For some reason, that sound made my stomach tighten. After cleanup, I stayed behind to help Denise lock the pantry. That's when I saw the wall. We had a corkboard near the entrance covered with old photos. Christmas dinners, volunteer groups, local newspaper clippings, a Polaroid of Earl wearing a paper crown from New Year's Eve. I'd looked at that wall 100 times. That night, every photo had the stranger in it. Not front and center, not posing, in the background, standing near the coffee table in one, by the coat rack in another, behind a group of volunteers from 3 years ago, his brown coat buttoned to his throat, his face half-shadowed but clear enough. I stepped closer. My skin went cold. "Denise," I said. She came over, wiping her hands on a towel. "What?" I pointed at a photo from last summer. "Was he here then?" She stared at it. For a long moment, she didn't answer. Then she laughed softly, but it sounded forced. "He must have been." "He wasn't," I said. "How would you know?" "Because I took that picture." The smile faded from her face. We stood there in the empty basement, the radiator ticking, the soup pot cooling behind us. Then Denise reached up and took the photo off the board. In the picture, I was standing with 3 other volunteers near the serving table, smiling with my eyes half closed because someone had caught me mid-laugh. And behind me, near the stairs, stood the stranger, looking directly at the camera. Denise whispered, "Maybe we just forgot." I didn't sleep well that night. The next evening, I almost didn't go in. I told myself I was being dramatic. It was a photo. Maybe he had been around before. Soup kitchens had lots of faces. People came and went. Not every memory stuck. But when I got to St. Agnes, the mood was strange. Denise was late, which never happened. Earl was sitting at his usual table with his hands wrapped around a paper cup, looking terrified. "Earl," I asked, "you okay?" He looked up at me, eyes wet. "What's my name?" he whispered. I thought he was joking at first. "What?" "My name," he said. "Tell me my name." "It's Earl." He repeated it under his breath like it was a foreign word. "Earl," he said. "Earl. Earl." At another table, Patrick was arguing with a volunteer because he couldn't remember what street he slept on. A woman named Linda kept opening her purse and checking her ID, then crying when she saw her own picture. I found Denise in the kitchen, gripping the counter. She looked exhausted. "I forgot my daughter's middle name this morning," she said. My mouth went dry. "What?" "I made her breakfast. She asked me to sign a school form. I wrote her first name, then just stopped." Denise pressed her palms into her eyes. "I know I have a daughter. I know her face. But for 5 whole minutes, I couldn't remember the name I gave her." The street looked ordinary outside the small basement windows, quiet, even comforting, but my gut told me something was off. I'd learned too late that danger often wears a friendly face. At 6:48, the basement door opened. The stranger came in. No one announced him. No one asked who he was. But heads turned toward him one by one, like flowers following light. A warmth moved through the room. That's the only way I can describe it. People relaxed. Linda stopped crying. Earl smiled through his fear. "There you are," he said. The stranger walked to the counter. I was holding the last bowl again. My hands trembled so badly the soup rippled. He looked at my name tag. Only it wasn't my name tag anymore. The sticker on my sweater said, "Hello, I'm Matthew." I stared down at it, confused and embarrassed, like maybe someone had slapped it on me as a joke. "My name is Marissa," I said. The stranger smiled for the first time. It was small, polite, almost kind. "For now," he said. I dropped the bowl. It shattered on the tile, soup spreading across the floor. Everyone turned to look at me, irritated, like I had interrupted something important. Denise grabbed my arm and pulled me into the pantry. "What is wrong with you?" she hissed. "You heard him. He didn't say anything." "Yes, he did." Denise looked through the pantry window toward the dining room. The stranger was kneeling, carefully picking up pieces of the broken bowl. He moved slowly, calmly, like a helpful guest. Then he looked toward the pantry window, straight at me. I backed away. Denise saw my face change, and something in her softened. "Marissa," she whispered, like saying my name took effort. "What's happening?" I didn't know. So we did the only normal thing we could think to do. We checked the records. Every guest signed in with first name only. Not for tracking, just so we could count how many meals we served. Denise kept the old notebooks in a file cabinet near the office. We locked ourselves in and pulled them out. January, December, November. His name wasn't there. Then Denise opened a notebook from 2 years before and went pale. On every page, in the 50th slot, the same name was written in neat block letters. Matthew. Same handwriting. Same black ink. Even on days when I knew we had closed for weather. Even on Christmas. Even on the week the basement had flooded and we served bag lunches upstairs. Matthew. 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 My heart sank into my stomach as the office door clicked shut behind me, and I realized we were completely alone down there. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. Denise tried calling Father Paul. No answer. I called 911, but when the dispatcher asked for the emergency, I didn't know what to say. There's a man in our soup kitchen, and everyone remembers him, even though he wasn't there. People are forgetting themselves. He's in our photos. It sounded insane. So I said there was a trespasser who wouldn't leave. The dispatcher told us an officer would come when available. When I hung up, Denise was staring at an old volunteer badge in her hand. It had her picture on it, but the name underneath said Matthew. She started shaking. From the dining room came laughter. Not loud, not cruel, just warm, familiar laughter, the kind of family makes after dinner. That somehow scared me more than screaming would have. I cracked open the office door. Everyone was sitting together now. Earl, Linda, Patrick, the volunteers, all of them facing the stranger as he stood near the photo wall. He was touching the pictures one by one. Each time his finger brushed a photo, someone at the table went still. Then they smiled. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling as I fumbled for the keys. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. Denise whispered, "We need to leave." We slipped out through the kitchen, toward the back stairs that led to the alley. Halfway there, she stopped. "What?" I whispered. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I don't know your name." That broke something in me. I grabbed her shoulders. "It's Marissa. My name is Marissa. Your name is Denise. Your daughter is Hannah Claire. You hate mushrooms. You drive a blue Corolla. You call everyone honey when you're tired." She sobbed once, covering her mouth. Behind us, someone said, "That's a lot to carry." We turned. The stranger stood at the end of the hall. No rush, no weapon, no anger. Just that calm, empty face. Denise stepped in front of me like she could protect me, even though she was shaking harder than I was. "What do you want?" she asked. He tilted his head. "Room." The lights flickered. For a second, I saw the hallway walls covered in photos. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Faces layered over faces. Families, church groups, school portraits, driver's license photos, wedding pictures. And in all of them, somewhere in the background, stood Matthew. Then the lights steadied, and it was just the old hallway again. Denise shoved me toward the stairs. "Run." We ran. I slipped on the icy alley steps and slammed my knee hard enough to see white spots, but Denise yanked me up. Behind us, the basement door opened. I expected footsteps. There weren't any, just voices. My mother's voice from the doorway, soft and worried. "Marissa, honey, come back." I froze so hard Denise nearly fell over me. My mother lived in Arizona. She had never been to St. Agnes. The voice came again. "Baby, don't leave me." Denise slapped my arm. "That is not her." I knew that, but some stupid, wounded part of me wanted to turn around anyway. We reached the street, just as a police cruiser pulled up. I stumbled toward it, crying so hard I couldn't explain anything. Denise kept repeating, "There's a man downstairs. Please, please." The officer went in. He came back 6 minutes later annoyed. "No one matching that description," he said. "Place is empty except for a few people eating. They said everything is fine." "That's not possible," I said. He looked at me like I was either drunk or cruel. "Ma'am, they all said the same thing. They said Matthew runs the kitchen." Denise made a sound I'll never forget. Small. Broken. We didn't go back inside. The official explanation became stress. Carbon monoxide was suggested, then dismissed. Someone said maybe bad soup caused confusion, even though nothing showed up in testing. Father Paul insisted there had never been a volunteer named Matthew, but 2 weeks later, the church website listed him as program coordinator. There was a photo of him on the page. Brown coat. Flat hair. No smile. Under it, the caption said he had served the community faithfully for 11 years. St. Agnes closed that spring after Denise moved away, and several regulars stopped showing up. Earl disappeared. Linda's sister came looking for her and said Linda had called crying because she couldn't remember her own birthday. Nobody found her. It's been almost 4 years. I don't volunteer anymore. I don't like group photos. I write my name on the inside cover of every journal I own. Sometimes, when I wake up, I say it out loud before I even sit up. Marissa Vale. Marissa Vale. Marissa Vale. Last month, my pharmacy manager hung up a picture from our holiday party. I wasn't there when it was taken. I'd called in sick that day. But in the photo, I'm standing behind the counter, smiling. And behind me, near the automatic doors, there's a man in a brown coat. Everyone at work swears he's a long-time customer. They say his name is Matthew. But yesterday, when I checked my schedule, my name wasn't on it. His was. And this morning, for almost 10 seconds, I couldn't remember what my mother used to call me when I was little. Story 5. I should have left it there. That was the first thought I had when I found the sleeping bag. But at the time, I was just grateful it existed at all. My name is Mara. I was 31 when this happened, living mostly between train stations, night buses, and the back corners of 24-hour stores in a mid-sized city that doesn't really matter. The kind of place where people look straight through you if you're sitting on the sidewalk too long. That winter was the worst I'd ever seen. Not just cold, wet cold. The kind that gets into your bones and doesn't leave even when you're inside. I remember sitting under the concrete overhang near the central station, watching people drag suitcases through the rain like they had somewhere worth going. My blanket was soaked through. My hands had stopped feeling like mine. That's when I saw it. At first, I thought it was trash. A dark bundle near the edge of the platform, half hidden behind a bench. But when I got closer, I realized it was a sleeping bag. Not cheap either. Thick, insulated, military-grade looking. Clean. Dry. Like it had just been dropped there by accident. No tag. No owner. Nothing. I looked around. Nobody paying attention. Nobody reacting. That was my first mistake. I told myself it was just luck. That someone abandoned it. That I'd hold on to it for one night, maybe 2, until I could figure out where it came from. I dragged it with me under the overpass that night like it might disappear if I didn't keep touching it. The moment I crawled inside, everything changed. Warm. Not just warm like fabric holding heat. Warm like it was remembering me. Like it already knew how to wrap itself around my body. I don't know how else to explain it. After months of freezing, I cried without meaning to. Just lying there, staring up at concrete, listening to the rain hit the overpass above me. And then I fell asleep. For the first time in months, I didn't wake up shivering. I should have known that was wrong. I woke up somewhere else. Not under the overpass. A narrow street. Old brick buildings. No station in sight. No noise I recognized. Just a flickering streetlight and the smell of wet asphalt. I was still inside the sleeping bag. I remember unzipping it so fast my hands tore at the fabric. My breath came out sharp, visible in the air. I stood up too quickly and almost fell. "This is not possible," I said out loud, like saying it would fix it. I told myself I must have been moved. Someone must have dragged me. A prank. A shelter transport I didn't remember. But deep down, I already knew how unlikely that was. I walked for almost an hour before I found a bus stop sign in a language I didn't recognize. That was the first real crack in my logic. By noon, I managed to find a map board. Different city. Not even close. I sat down hard on the pavement when I realized my bag was still with me. Still warm. That night, I forced myself not to sleep in it. I wrapped myself in a thin blanket instead and stayed awake against a wall near a closed grocery store. I lasted maybe 3 hours. Then everything went black. I didn't feel myself falling asleep. Just a cut, like someone turned a page. When I opened my eyes again, I was on a different street. Wider this time. Cars I'd never seen before. Tall buildings with glass faces reflecting a sky that didn't match the one I fell asleep under. My stomach dropped. I checked my phone. No signal. Battery at 11%. And the sleeping bag was still around me, partially unzipped like I'd only just stopped using it. That's when I noticed something worse. Breathing. Not mine. Faint. Close. Inside the fabric. Slow inhale. Slow exhale. I froze completely. I pressed my ear to it, trying to convince myself it was wind in the insulation. But it didn't stop. It matched a rhythm that wasn't mine. I backed away from it so fast I tripped over the curb. I left it there for the first time that day. Just walked away. I didn't get far. Maybe 2 blocks. Then I felt that pull again. That exhaustion that doesn't belong to your body. The kind that hits your spine first. I told myself, don't sleep. Just don't sleep. I sat in a bus station bathroom with my head down, water running over my wrists. I counted backwards from 100. I got to 37. Then I blinked, and I was somewhere else. This time a train yard. Fog everywhere. Empty tracks stretching into darkness. And the sleeping bag was under my arm like it had never left. That was when I started panicking for real. Not quiet fear, not confusion. Real panic. I threw it as far as I could. It landed near the rails and didn't move. I should have run, but I didn't. Because I heard it. My name. Mara. Not loud. Not shouted. Just spoken. From inside the sleeping bag. I backed away until my shoulder hit a metal post. The sleeping bag didn't open. It didn't move. But the voice came again. Closer. Mara. Like it was trying to remember me correctly. I ran. I don't know how long I ran that night. Through fences. Across roads. Past warehouses that all looked the same in the fog. Eventually, I found a police patrol car parked near a gas station. I knocked on the window so hard my knuckles bled. The officer inside looked annoyed more than concerned. Ma'am, are you okay? I tried to explain. I really did. Sleeping bag. Disappearing locations. Voices. He looked at me like I was just another problem he didn't have time for. You been using anything? He asked. No. Please. You don't understand. It moves me when I sleep. That made him sigh. He stepped out, glanced around, then looked at the bundle in my arms. Because I hadn't even realized it. It was back. I don't know how it got there, but it was folded neatly, like it had been placed back into my grip while I was talking. The officer noticed my expression change. What is that? He asked, more serious now. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out, because the sleeping bag was heavier, like something inside had shifted. He told me to drop it. I tried. My hands wouldn't open. Not pain, just refusal, like my body didn't agree with the idea. The officer reached for it himself, and the moment his fingers touched the fabric, he stopped. He went still. His face went blank for half a second. Then he pulled his hand back like he'd been burned. I don't like that, he said quietly. That was the first time I saw fear in someone else's eyes. Real fear. He told me to get in the car. Said we were going to the station. But halfway there, I realized something. The city outside wasn't moving correctly. Streetlights repeating. Same intersection twice. Same broken billboard. The officer kept checking the rearview mirror. At one point, he whispered, "Why is it doing that?" I didn't answer, because I saw it too. The sleeping bag wasn't in my hands anymore. It was behind me, on the back seat, still zipped, and slightly rising and falling. Breathing. The car stopped. Not at a station. At a train platform. The exact kind I'd first found it near. Rain starting again. Harder this time. The officer got out slowly, like he was walking in a dream. "Ma'am," he said, but he wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the sleeping bag. It opened on its own. Just a little. Enough. Inside was darkness that didn't look like fabric anymore. More like depth. Like space that didn't belong inside anything that small. The officer stepped closer. I screamed at him not to, but he kept walking, like he couldn't hear me properly anymore. And then he leaned in, just enough to look inside. He didn't come back out. No blood. No struggle. Just gone. The sleeping bag closed slowly afterward, like a mouth finishing a meal. I ran. I didn't stop until I was back under the same overpass where I first found it. And there it was, waiting, neatly placed in the exact spot I had slept that first night, like it had always known I would return. I haven't slept in it since, but that doesn't matter, because I don't think it needs me to sleep anymore. Sometimes I wake up standing in places I don't remember walking to. Train stations, bus stops, empty streets in cities I've never named. And every time it's nearby, folded, patient, waiting for me to come back inside. Last week, I saw a missing persons poster at a shelter wall. Old paper, rain damaged. The face on it made my stomach drop. The officer. Under it, a note written by hand. Last seen near Central Station. Witness reported a large sleeping bag moving on its own. I couldn't breathe after reading that, because someone had added something underneath. Fresh ink. One word. Mara. And that's when I understood something I didn't want to accept. It isn't just carrying people. It's collecting them. And I think it's still trying to take me somewhere. Somewhere I'm already halfway to, every time I close my eyes. Story 6. I first noticed something was wrong when I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen another living person in that building. Not clearly anyway. Just echoes. Doors closing somewhere far away. Water running. A faint laugh that didn't belong to anyone I ever actually saw. My name is Daniel Mercer. I'm 41. Former Army. Iraq, 2 deployments. After I got out, I did security jobs, construction, anything that kept me moving. But when my knee finally gave out and the VA paperwork started dragging on forever, I ended up on the streets for a while. Winter does something to you when you've got nowhere to go. It strips away pride first, then memory, then the part of you that argues with bad decisions. That's how I ended up inside the building on Halden Street. It was supposed to be abandoned. 10 floors. Old residential complex from the 80s. Boarded up windows, chain link fence, graffiti on the lower walls. I found a side door half jammed open behind a dumpster line. Wind was cutting through me that night so bad I didn't even think twice. I just went in. Inside, it didn't feel abandoned. That was the first lie. The lobby lights were on. Not flickering. Not broken. Just on. Warm yellow light spilling across clean tiles like someone had mopped them that morning. There was even a faint smell of detergent in the air. I remember standing there for a full minute, just listening. No rats. No dripping pipes. No wind. Just silence that felt too organized. I told myself it was probably squatters. Maybe a caretaker using it illegally. I've seen stranger things. The elevator worked. That should have been my second warning. I took it to the 4th floor because it felt safer than walking up dark stairs. The doors opened with a soft chime like I was in some hotel instead of a condemned building. And when I stepped out, I found an apartment door already open. Not forced. Not broken. Just slightly ajar like someone was expecting me. I should have left right there. But I was cold. And when you're cold enough, your instincts get quiet. Inside that apartment, everything was perfect. Furniture, couch, coffee table, even a blanket folded neatly on the armrest. The fridge hummed when I opened it. It was stocked. Milk, eggs, leftovers in glass containers. even bottled water with condensation still on it. I remember laughing a little because my first thought was, maybe this is some government relocation thing. Temporary housing. But there was no paperwork, no name, no mess, no life. Just a place prepared for someone who wasn't there. I slept on that couch that night. I told myself I'd leave in the morning, but I didn't. Because in the morning, the water in the shower was hot, and I hadn't had hot water in months. That was how the building got me. Not fear, comfort. The first time I heard the voices, I was shaving. I paused mid-stroke because I thought I heard someone in the hallway outside the bathroom. A man and a woman talking softly. Casual, like a married couple arguing about breakfast. "Did you leave the stove on?" a woman said. "I told you I did," a man replied, tired, familiar. Then a child laughed. Not loud, just small, like a kid rolling on a carpet. I opened the bathroom door. The hallway was empty, dead quiet, but I could still hear them. Behind the walls. That's what I told myself. Old buildings make sounds. Pipes. Air ducts. Sound travels weird. But the voices weren't random. They had rhythm. Lives. Over the next few days, I explored more floors. Every apartment was the same. Unlocked. Clean. Fully furnished. Some had dishes drying in racks. Some had clothes folded on beds. One even had a TV already playing static like it had been left on pause. But no people. Never people. Still, I started staying longer than I should have. Because every time I stepped inside a unit, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Normal. One apartment had a faint smell of coffee and toast in the morning. Another had a bathtub already filled with warm water, like someone had just stepped out. It was like the building was remembering life and replaying it for me. I started hearing more at night. Not just voices. Moments. A couple laughing in the kitchen below me. A spoon tapping against a ceramic bowl. A woman crying softly in a bathroom I couldn't locate. Sometimes I'd stand in the hallway just listening, trying to place where the sounds came from. The strangest part? When I knocked on the walls, the sounds would stop, like they were listening back. I told myself I was just lonely. That's the dangerous thought. The one that makes you stop questioning things. Around day 4, I met someone else. Or I think I did. I saw a man in the hallway outside apartment 7C. Mid-50s maybe. Gray hoodie. Sitting on the floor with his back against the wall. He looked like he'd been crying. "You hear them too?" he asked without looking up. I hesitated. "Yeah." He nodded like that was expected. "They get louder at night." "Who are they?" I asked. That made him finally look at me. His eyes were tired. Too tired. "People who used to live here," he said. I almost laughed. "This place is empty." He shook his head slowly. "No, it's not." Then he pointed at the wall behind him. "That one talks to me sometimes." I frowned. "What does it say?" He stared at the wall for a long time before answering. "It asks when I'm going to stop pretending I'm alone." I should have walked away, but I didn't. Instead, I went back to my apartment and tried to sleep. That night, I heard my own name. Clear. Right outside the door. "Daniel." I sat up instantly. Silence. Then again. "Daniel, dinner's ready." A woman's voice. Soft. Familiar in a way that made my chest tighten before I even understood why. I stood up slowly, heart pounding, and opened the door. The hallway light was on. My apartment door across the hall was open too. And inside, I saw a table set for 3. Steam rising from plates. A man sitting at the head of the table, his back to me. A woman standing in the kitchen, stirring something in a pot. And a child sitting on the floor playing with toy cars. My breath caught. Because I knew them. Not physically. Not logically. But somewhere buried deep in me I knew them. Like a life I had lost and couldn't remember losing. "Daniel," the woman said again, turning slightly. My chest went tight. I stepped forward before I could stop myself. Then the child looked up, smiled, and said, "Dad, you're home late." My vision blurred for a second. Something inside me cracked. Because I felt it. Not thought it. Felt it. Like I had been gone a long time. Like I had come back. And for a moment, just one moment, I almost walked in. Then my knee gave out. Pain shot through me as I stumbled back into the hallway. The illusion broke instantly. The apartment was empty. No table, no food, no family, just bare walls and silence. But I still smelled dinner, still heard faint laughter fading behind the walls like it was moving deeper into the building. That's when I realized something terrible. The building wasn't haunted. It was building something. And the more I stayed, the more I became part of it. I started noticing changes in myself after that night. Small things at first. I'd forget which floor I was on. I'd hear conversations that stopped when I entered rooms, like I was interrupting something already happening. And sometimes, I'd wake up in apartments I didn't remember entering. That was when I decided I needed to leave. For real this time. I packed what I had and headed for the stairs instead of the elevator. But every door I passed on the way down was open. And every open door showed a version of life I almost recognized. A woman setting a coat on a chair like she was waiting for someone. A man watching TV in silence like he'd been there forever. A child drawing on the wall, humming. Each one felt wrong in the same specific way, like memories that didn't belong to me. Halfway down the 5th floor, I saw the elevator doors open by themselves. Inside was my apartment, my things, my voice on a radio I didn't own, speaking words I don't remember saying. Just stay a little longer. I turned and ran. I don't know how long I ran for. Stairs blurred, floors repeated, hallways stretched longer than they should have. At some point, I stopped recognizing the building layout entirely. That's when I saw them. People standing behind the walls. Not breaking through. Not trapped. Just there. Silhouettes behind drywall. Sitting at tables. Lying in beds. Talking softly to each other. Living. But not fully. One of them turned their head toward me. And smiled. Like they knew I was almost ready. I don't remember how I got out. I only remember stumbling into freezing air outside the building, collapsing on the pavement, gasping like I'd been underwater too long. No one followed me. No alarms. No doors slamming. Just silence behind me. Like the building didn't care anymore. Like it already had what it needed. I reported it later. Police went in. They found an abandoned structure. Empty units. No furniture. No running water. No electricity. Just a dead building waiting to be demolished. They told me I was probably squatting in an unfinished renovation site and hallucinating from stress and cold. I wanted to believe them. I really did. But sometimes, when I'm alone in cheap motel rooms or temporary housing, I hear it again. Soft voices behind the walls. A woman calling dinner. A child laughing quietly. And sometimes, just sometimes, I hear my own voice answering. Like I never really left. And the worst part is, I don't always remember stepping outside. Story 7. It started with something I almost didn't even notice. A dog that refused to walk past certain people. At the time, I was living near the old Riverside Cemetery, one of those forgotten places in the city where the gates never fully close and the grass grows uneven like it's giving up in patches. I was homeless then, 29 years old. No job, no steady family contact, just me and a mixed-breed stray I'd picked up months earlier. I called him Bristle. Not because he looked scary, he didn't. He was small, scruffy, one ear slightly torn like he'd been in too many fights he didn't start. But his eyes were alert in a way that made people uncomfortable without knowing why. We slept behind the cemetery maintenance shed most nights. It was dry, hidden, and the groundskeeper didn't bother us as long as we stayed out of sight. Life was simple, cold, predictable, until Bristle started noticing things I couldn't. At first, it was small, almost laughable. He'd growl at empty corners. Not at people, not at animals, at nothing. I remember one night clearly. We were walking near the subway entrance by Hollow Street, the one that always smelled like rust and wet concrete. It was just me, Bristle, and the sound of trains screaming underground. Then Bristle stopped. No warning. No hesitation. He planted himself in front of me, hackles raised, staring into the stairwell like something was coming up that I couldn't see. I looked. Nothing there. Just flickering light and a half-broken vending machine humming to itself. "Relax," I muttered. "It's nothing." But Bristle didn't relax. He didn't even blink. He let out this low, vibrating growl I'd never heard before. Not aggressive. Not scared. Warning. Then he backed up slowly, pulling me with him by the sleeve of my jacket. That was the first time I felt it, that strange doubt crawling up my spine. I told myself it was just a stray dog reacting to city noise. I told myself a lot of things back then. The first real incident happened 3 nights later. We were near the bus stop outside the cemetery when a man sat down beside me. Normal enough. Dark coat, tired posture, eyes fixed forward. Nothing unusual in a city like ours. But Bristle went rigid. Not growling this time. Silent. Completely still. Then he did something I still can't explain properly. He stood between me and the man, and started pushing me backward with his head. Not aggressively. Not like he wanted to fight. Like he wanted distance. I remember laughing awkwardly. "Come on, man," I whispered to him. "He's just sitting there." But Bristle refused to move past the dog bench. He circled me, tugging me away, refusing to let me sit anywhere near that man. And then something strange happened. The man stood up without saying a word. Walked away. No phone call. No bus arriving. Nothing. Just a left. As he passed under the streetlight, Bristle let out a single sharp bark. And I swear to God, the man turned his head slightly toward us even though he was already walking away. Not at me. At the dog. Like he was acknowledging something. That night, I didn't sleep properly. The real shift came a week later. We were near the market district, scrounging behind a bakery dumpster. Bristle was usually calm around food areas, but that night he was tense again. And then I saw him react before I saw anything else. He lunged, not forward, but sideways, clamping his teeth onto my jacket and yanking me back hard. I stumbled, almost fell. "Hey! What the hell?" Then I saw it. A woman walking toward us. She looked normal. Headphones in. Grocery bag in hand. Middle-aged, maybe early 40s. But Bristle was losing his mind. He was dragging me backward, refusing to let me face her directly. And here's the part that still messes with me. As she got closer, she smiled. Not at me. At him. A slow, deliberate smile like she recognized something she wasn't supposed to recognize. Bristle barked once, sharp, panicked, and I felt him physically shove me away from her path. She stopped for half a second, looked right at me, then at the dog, then whispered something I couldn't hear, and kept walking. After she passed, Bristle didn't relax for almost 10 minutes. He just sat there staring at where she disappeared, shaking slightly like he'd just escaped something I couldn't comprehend. That's when I started paying attention. Really paying attention. Every time Bristle acted like that, it meant something was off. And every time I ignored it, something followed. A man who kept showing up near us but never begged or spoke. A couple that stood too still on the platform stairs. A security guard who didn't blink for too long. Nothing I could prove. Nothing I could report. Just patterns. Then came the night everything escalated. It was raining hard. The kind of rain that makes the city feel empty, even when it isn't. We were heading back toward the cemetery when Bristle stopped dead at the gate. He wouldn't cross. I pulled gently. "Come on, we're home." He refused. Instead, he turned and started pulling me in the opposite direction. Hard. Urgent. I followed him without thinking. Something in his panic was different this time. Less warning. More survival. We ended up near the old Midtown shelter. It was one of the few places that still accepted walk-ins at night. Warm light spilled from the windows. I could hear voices inside. Chairs moving. Normal life. And I remember feeling relief. "Finally," I muttered. Somewhere dry. But Bristle was shaking. Not growling. Shaking. He planted himself right in front of the door and refused to let me enter. I laughed nervously. "What now? You don't like shelters either?" Then I looked through the glass. And my stomach dropped. Everyone inside was sitting perfectly still. Not talking. Not moving. All of them facing the door. Waiting. For me. I froze. A man near the window smiled slightly. Then another person tilted their head in sync. All of them, at once, turned their eyes toward the glass. Not blinking, not reacting, just waiting, like they had already decided something about me. I stepped back instantly. Okay, no way. I tried to pull Bristle away, but he refused to move. Instead, he pressed himself between me and the door like a wall, protecting me. The lights inside flickered, and suddenly, all of them stood up at the same time. No noise, no hesitation, just coordinated movement like they were rehearsed. They started walking toward the entrance. Slow, uniform. Bristle snapped. He grabbed my sleeve and yanked me hard down the street. I ran. I didn't even think. I just ran. We didn't stop until we were 3 blocks away, under an abandoned stairwell. I was shaking so badly I could barely breathe. What was that? I whispered. Bristle didn't answer, obviously, but he kept looking back toward the shelter, growling under his breath. That night, I started noticing the pattern clearly. It wasn't random. It was recognition. Bristle wasn't reacting to danger. He was reacting to something pretending to be human. The turning point came 2 nights later. I was exhausted, cold, desperate enough to consider going back. The cemetery felt wrong now. Even familiar places felt watched. We passed the shelter again. This time, the lights were off. No movement inside. I thought maybe it had been a hallucination. Stress. Sleep deprivation. I almost convinced myself. Then Bristle stopped again. This time at a different building. A small community hall. Warm lights. People inside. A sign that read Night Safety Shelter, open. I hesitated. You're kidding, I whispered. Not again. But Bristle wasn't panicking this time. He was focused. Careful. He looked at the building, then at me, then back again. Like he was making a decision. Then he stepped forward, not toward the building, toward a side alley next to it, and started pulling me away from the entrance. That's when I saw them, through the window, inside the hall, people sitting quietly, already facing the door, waiting. Again, but something was different this time. One of them was already smiling, directly at me. I backed away slowly. Nope. No. I'm done. Bristle didn't hesitate. He pulled me into the alley. Fast. Hard. Like he knew something was about to happen. We didn't stop until we were deep behind the industrial district, near the train yards. That's when I asked him out loud, like an idiot. Are you trying to save me? He looked at me. Just looked. And for the first time, I noticed something I hadn't before. He wasn't reacting to fear. He was reacting to recognition. Like he could tell what was human, and what wasn't. The truth hit me slowly after that. Every time he pulled me away from someone, every time he refused a place, every time he growled at empty spaces, he was separating me from them, from things that looked right, but weren't. I don't know what they are. I don't think I want to know. All I know is I stopped going near crowds after that. Stopped trusting shelters. Stopped trusting silence. Bristle never left my side again. Even now, years later, I still don't sleep in enclosed places with groups of strangers. And sometimes late at night, when the city feels too quiet, Bristle still lifts his head, stares into corners I can't see, and growls softly, like something is still watching, still waiting, and still learning how to look like us. Story 8. The last bench in the park. I still can't explain why I didn't leave the park sooner that night. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was habit. Or maybe it was that strange human belief that if something feels slightly wrong, it still won't be dangerous. My name is Lila. I was 29 at the time, living in Chicago, though living is a generous word. I was mostly drifting, odd cleaning jobs, occasional kitchen shifts, sometimes sleeping in shelters, sometimes not. The kind of life where days blur together and you stop expecting anything new to happen. There was a park I stayed near most nights. Not because it was safe, but because it was familiar. A long stretch of grass, a broken fountain in the center, and a row of benches that curved around the walking path like tired teeth. Among the people who stayed around there, Other homeless folks, night drifters, people with nowhere better to go. There was a rule. Nobody slept on the last bench, the one closest to the old fountain. No one ever explained why. They just didn't. If someone new tried it, they'd get told once, quietly. If they insisted, they'd usually be gone by morning anyway, one way or another. I remember laughing the first time I heard it. Superstition, I said. An older man named Rico just shook his head. It's not superstition. It's courtesy. To who? He didn't answer that. That should have been enough to make me avoid it. But I was tired of rules I didn't understand, especially ones whispered like they were prayers. So I ignored it. The first night I used that bench, nothing happened. It was cold, around late autumn, wind cutting through my jacket like it wasn't even there. I lay down on the bench near the fountain, pulled my backpack under my head, and told myself I'd just sleep for a few hours before moving on. The fountain was dry, had been for years from what people said, just cracked stone and dead leaves collecting in the basin. I fell asleep staring at it. I don't remember drifting off. I remember waking up. It was 3:17 a.m. I know because I checked my phone out of habit, even though the battery was already dead. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Not normal silence. No traffic from the distant road. No wind through the trees. No insects. No rustling leaves. Even the distant city hum felt like it had been switched off. It was like the world had been paused. Then I noticed the man sitting beside me. He was wearing an old suit. Not dirty exactly, just outdated, like something from a photograph that had aged poorly. His posture was straight, hands folded neatly in his lap, eyes forward toward the fountain. He didn't look at me when he spoke. "Are you ready to give your statement?" My body went cold so fast it felt unreal. I sat up immediately. "What?" He turned his head slightly, just enough that I could see his face. Not threatening, not angry, just blank, tired in a way that didn't belong to sleep. "This is your designated time," he said. "We proceed when the subject is present." "I think you've got the wrong person," I said quickly, already sliding my legs off the bench. But when I stood, the park was wrong. Not just silent, empty in a way that didn't make sense. No movement at all. No lights from nearby streets. The skyline I usually saw beyond the trees was gone. Just darkness where the city should have been. I turned back to the bench. The man was still there, waiting. I told myself I was dreaming, that I had passed out from exhaustion, that this was some stress hallucination. That's what I wanted to believe. The man gestured toward the bench. "Please sit. We are behind schedule." "I'm not sitting anywhere," I said, backing away. That's when I noticed something worse. The bench wasn't just a bench anymore. It looked longer than it should have been, like it extended further into the dark behind the fountain, stretching in a way my eyes couldn't properly measure. The wood looked older too, darker, as if it had been used for far longer than any park fixture should exist. And carved into the side, faint but visible, were names. Hundreds of them, some fresh, some barely readable. I saw one I recognized. "Rico." My throat tightened. The man finally looked at me directly. "You are scheduled for evaluation," he said calmly. "Please cooperate." "I don't know what you're talking about," I snapped. "I'm leaving." I turned and walked fast. Then I stopped, because the path I had come from wasn't there anymore. Just trees. Dense, unnatural, pressed too close together like they had grown overnight. I was still in the park, but it didn't feel like the same one. When I turned back, the man had not moved. But the bench had. It was closer now. Too close. I didn't sleep that night. I don't know if you can even call it night. Eventually, I must have passed out again, because the next thing I remember is sunlight. Real sunlight. Birds. Cars. Movement. The park exactly how it should have been. Except I was still on the bench, and there was a paper beside me, folded neatly. On it, in typed letters, was a single line. Statement 1. Subject denies recognition of death. My hand started shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I left immediately. I didn't come back for 3 days. But homelessness doesn't really allow avoidance. You circle back to the same places whether you want to or not. On the fourth night, I had nowhere else to go. So I went back. The others noticed immediately. Rico looked at me like I had returned from somewhere I wasn't supposed to survive. "You used it again," he said quietly. "I didn't know what it was," I replied. "It's just a bench." He shook his head. "It's not just a bench." He refused to say more. That night I tried to sleep elsewhere in the park, near the opposite side. But around 3 a.m., I woke up again. No sound, no wind, no city, and I already knew what I would see before I turned my head. The man was there. Same suit, same posture. This time he was closer. "Second statement," he said. "We will proceed with clarification." I stood up fast. "I'm not doing this. Whatever this is, I'm not part of it." He tilted his head slightly. "That is noted." Then he asked me a question. Not loud, not aggressive, just precise. "Why are you occupying a space designated for those who have already concluded their lives?" My stomach dropped. "I'm alive," I said immediately. Obviously, he didn't respond right away. Instead, he looked at my hands, at my wrists, at my face, like he was reviewing something invisible. Then he said, "That is disputed." The air felt heavier after that. I backed away slowly, heart hammering. "You're insane," I said. "I don't know what you want, but I'm not dead." He stood up for the first time. Not fast, not threatening, just inevitable. "You are here because your name was recorded," he said. "Unclaimed, unverified, unacknowledged." "I don't understand." "Most do not," he interrupted. Then he stepped closer, and for a second, I saw something behind him. Not the park, not trees. Something like rows of benches stretching endlessly into darkness, each one occupied by silhouettes sitting perfectly still, waiting to be addressed. I stumbled back so hard I nearly fell. When I looked again, it was gone. Just the park. Just him. He spoke softly. "Are you ready to accept correction?" I ran. I didn't stop running until I was outside the park completely, lungs burning, hands shaking so badly I couldn't hold anything. I told myself I would never go back. But 2 nights later, I woke up on a bench again. Same one. Same fountain. Same silence. And that's when I realized something I didn't want to understand. I hadn't been moving between places. The place had been moving around me. The man was already there when I opened my eyes. He looked almost patient now, as if he knew I would eventually stop running. "This is your third statement," he said. "Consistency is required." My voice broke. "What happens if I don't cooperate?" He looked at me for a long moment, then answered simply, "Then you remain unclassified." I don't remember every question after that, only fragments. "Do you remember your last day of employment? Do you recall your last confirmed address? Who last acknowledged your existence?" Each question felt like something being peeled away. Not memories exactly, more like certainty, like I was slowly becoming unsure whether I had ever been real in the first place. At some point, I started crying without realizing it, not because I was hurt, because I couldn't remember my last birthday, or whether anyone had ever said my name out loud with certainty. The bench beneath me felt colder, longer, deeper, like it was pulling something out of me with every answer I didn't have. Then the man stopped. He wrote something I couldn't see, and said, "Status pending resolution." The silence broke. A car horn in the distance, a dog barking, wind through leaves. I gasped like I had been underwater. He was gone. The bench looked normal again. I ran before I could think. I left Chicago within a week after that. Took whatever work I could find. Slept in stations, shelters, sometimes hallways. Anywhere except near parks. But memory doesn't reset. Sometimes when I'm half asleep, I still hear that voice. "Calm. Close. Are you ready to give your statement?" And I always wake up before I can answer. Because the worst part isn't the bench. It's the feeling that somewhere my file is still open. Still unfinished. Still waiting for someone to decide what I am supposed to be. Story 9. I still don't know if what we saw that night was real, or if the woods were just messing with our heads. But I do know one thing for sure. Our tent wasn't the only one out there anymore. My name is Daniel, I was 31 when this happened. At the time, I was living out of a tent with my girlfriend, Mara. We'd been drifting for almost a year, odd jobs, couch surfing when we could, and when that failed, the edge of towns where nobody really cared enough to ask questions. We ended up near Hollow Creek, just outside a small logging town. There was a stretch of woods behind an abandoned service road, quiet enough that nobody bothered us. It wasn't ideal, but it was safe. Or at least it felt that way at first. We pitched our tent about 20 meters into the tree line, close enough to the road for light, far enough to not be seen. Mara always tried to make it feel like home. She'd arrange our little things carefully: 2 sleeping bags, a battered kettle, a small lantern she'd stolen from a clearance bin months earlier. "You act like we're camping," I remember saying one night. She just smiled. "We are camping, just permanently." We laughed about it then. I wish we hadn't. The first sign something was off came on the 3rd night. I was sitting outside the tent, finishing a cigarette, when I noticed light between the trees. Not car headlights, not a flashlight, a lantern. Soft, orange, stationary. Mara leaned out behind me. "Someone else camping?" I shrugged. "Probably hunters, or hikers." But something about it didn't feel right. The light was too steady, too still, and there was no sound. No footsteps, no voices. Just that glow sitting deeper in the woods like it had always been there. We didn't think much of it, not at first. The next night it came closer. Not by much, maybe 10 meters. Still deep in the trees, but now we could clearly see the shape behind it. A tent. Small, old-looking. The kind of faded nylon you'd expect from a thrift store or survival kit. But there was something strange. No footprints around it. No path leading in. Just the tent, sitting there like it had been dropped from above. Mara didn't like it. "I didn't hear anyone set that up," she said quietly. "Maybe they did it earlier," I replied. She didn't answer. We went inside and zipped the tent shut earlier than usual that night. Around midnight, I woke up. Not from noise, from silence. The woods had this quality sometimes. Wind through leaves, distant animals, insects, but that night it all felt paused. Mara was awake too. "I hear something," she whispered. At first I didn't. Then I did. A voice. Close. Right outside our tent. Not shouting. Not calling. Just speaking. And it was repeating something we had said earlier that day. "We can leave in the morning. We can leave in the morning." I froze. Mara grabbed my arm so hard it hurt. The voice wasn't just mimicking us. It was perfect. Same tone. Same hesitation. Even the tiny pause I made between words. Then another line came. "I don't trust that road." My stomach dropped. I said that hours earlier, when we were debating whether to move deeper into the woods. Mara mouthed silently. "That's not possible." I shook my head. The voice kept going, repeating fragments of our day. Conversations. Even jokes. Then it stopped. Complete silence again. We didn't sleep after that. The next morning, we went outside expecting to find tracks. There were none. Not even from our own tent. The ground around us looked untouched, like no one had been there at all. But the second tent was still there. Closer again. This time maybe 5 meters away. Mara wanted to leave immediately. "We're packing. Right now." But I hesitated, because I was starting to think maybe it was some kind of prank. A weird local thing. Maybe kids messing around in the woods. Still, something in my gut said no. We didn't leave. That was mistake number 1. By the 5th night, the second tent was almost beside ours. I remember sitting there, staring at it through the mesh of our tent door, feeling like my brain couldn't fully process what I was seeing. 2 tents. Ours and the other one, side by side. No space between them. No path. No disturbance in the soil. Just suddenly there. Mara was crying quietly. "This doesn't make sense," she kept saying. "This doesn't make any sense." I didn't have answers. And then we heard it again. From inside the other tent. Our voices. Not just words this time. A full conversation. Me laughing. Mara responding. Even the exact moment she got irritated at me for dropping the kettle earlier that day. It was playback, but wrong somehow. Too accurate. Too alive. Mara whispered, "That's us." I didn't answer, because I was watching the zipper of the other tent move slightly, like something inside had shifted, and then a hand pressed against the fabric from the inside. Just once, then gone. That was the first time I felt real fear. Not curiosity, not confusion. Fear. We decided to leave immediately the next morning. But when I opened the tent flap, I froze. The woods were wrong. Not visually, not at first glance, but something about the spacing, the silence, the stillness. And the other tent was now slightly open. The lantern inside was on, and I could see movement. Someone sitting inside, facing us. Mara grabbed my sleeve. "Don't look too long." But I did, and that's when I noticed something that made my skin go cold. The person inside wasn't moving normally. They were waiting, perfectly still, upright, facing our tent like they had been sitting there for hours. Then they raised their head slightly and said my name, not like a question, like recognition. "Daniel." Mara backed away. "Nope. No. We're leaving. We're leaving right now." We ran. No packing. No thinking. Just ran. We made it maybe 50 meters before I stopped, because I realized something. The tent we were running from was gone. Completely. No second tent. No lantern. Nothing. Just trees. Mara stopped too, breathing hard. "Where did it go?" I turned slowly and saw it. Behind us. Now placed exactly where ours had been. Same position. Same angle. Same everything. But this time, our tent was gone. We stood there frozen. Then we heard a zipper open behind us. Slow. Deliberate. We turned, and I swear on everything I had, our tent was there again. But it wasn't empty. There were two silhouettes inside, sitting still, waiting. Mara whispered, "That's us." And that's when I understood something I didn't want to understand. The other tent wasn't following us. It was already here. It had always been here, and we were the ones moving toward it. From inside the tent, our voices spoke again. But this time they weren't repeating. They were warning us. "Don't come in. Don't let it see you." Mara backed away slowly. "What is that supposed to mean?" The voices stopped. Then one of them spoke again. Calm. Flat. It already did. I grabbed her hand. "Run." We didn't look back. We just ran until the trees opened into the dirt road. We made it to town by sunrise. We told a ranger station what happened. They sent people out. They found our original campsite. Our tent was there. Empty. No second tent. No lantern. No footprints. Nothing unusual at all. The ranger told us it was probably sleep deprivation. Stress hallucinations. Woods do weird things to the mind, he said. Mara didn't argue. Neither did I. We left the area that day. But here's the part one still can't shake. 3 weeks later, while staying at a shelter, I woke up in the middle of the night. Mara wasn't beside me. I found her outside, standing near the fence, staring into the dark. "What are you doing?" I asked. She didn't look at me, just whispered, "It's closer again." I followed her gaze, and for a second, I saw it, a faint lantern glow between distant trees, and beside it, a tent, and another one forming next to it. Same shape, same size, like it was learning. Mara finally spoke again, barely audible. "They found us before." I turned to her. "Who is they?" She looked at me then, and I wish she hadn't, because she said something I still think about every night. "We are." Story 10. I still hear the sound of that first tooth hitting my cup. Even now, years later, I can't decide what part was worse, the sound itself, or the fact that I didn't question it for a full 5 seconds. My name is Adrian. Back then I was 26, living in a small rented room above a laundromat near the Westlake subway station. I didn't have much going on. No stable job, no real routine, just a violin case and a habit of playing outside the station for spare change. Most people ignored me. Some dropped coins. A few stopped long enough to pretend they were listening. It was quiet work, predictable, safe in a way, at least until him. There was a rule among street performers near Westlake, a kind of unspoken agreement. You don't play after 11:30 near the lower stairwell entrance. Nobody explained why. They just said it like it was obvious. Just don't, an older guitarist told me once. I asked him what happens if you do. He looked at me like I was new to the world. Then something listens back. I laughed it off. I wish I hadn't. The first time I saw the man, it was late October. Cold enough that my fingers hurt even inside my gloves. The station crowd was thinning out, commuters rushing underground like the city was trying to swallow them. I was playing something slow, nothing special, just filling the silence. That's when I noticed him. He stood a few feet away from my cup. Pale skin, too pale in a way that didn't match the streetlights. Long coat, dark gray, clean but old-fashioned. He wasn't watching me play. He was watching my cup. When the train came and the crowd shifted, I looked away for maybe 10 seconds. When I looked back, he was closer, and something was already in my cup. At first I thought it was a coin, light, small, reflective. Then I realized it wasn't metal. It was white, a tooth, human. My hand froze mid-note. The violin screeched out of tune. I stared at it, expecting someone to laugh, to say it was a prank. But no one reacted. Not a single commuter even looked at me. The man was still there, watching. Then he spoke, quietly, like he was speaking inside my ear instead of across the space between us. Play the song again. My mouth went dry. Well, what is this? He didn't answer. He just repeated it. Play the song again. Something about his voice made my stomach twist. Not fear exactly. Something heavier. Like recognition I didn't understand. I did the stupidest thing I've ever done. I played. I don't even remember choosing the song. My hands just moved. Notes came out shaky at first, then steadier. The same melody I always played when I was trying to stay invisible in a crowd. And then something changed. The sound of the station faded. Footsteps slowed. Conversations dulled. The echo of trains softened like someone had wrapped the world in fabric. I looked up. Everyone was still moving, but wrong. Too smooth, too synchronized, like they were remembering how to be human instead of actually being it. Their eyes weren't focused anymore. They were blank, and the subway lights above flickered like candle flames. I stopped playing immediately. The sound snapped back like glass breaking. People blinked. Someone bumped into me. A train roared in the tunnel. Normal again. Almost. Except the man was gone, and my cup had another tooth in it. That night I didn't sleep. I told myself I'd imagined it. Stress, exhaustion, bad lighting. Easy explanations. But the next evening he came back. Same spot. Same silence around him. This time he didn't wait for me to notice. He dropped 2 teeth into the cup before I even started playing. Then he said it again. Play the song again. My throat tightened. Where are you getting these? He tilted his head slightly. Like the question didn't matter. Like I didn't matter. I should have left. I didn't. I played again. And again, the world softened at the edges. This time it was worse. A woman near the stairs stopped walking mid-step. A man froze with his phone halfway to his ear. A child tugging at his mother's sleeve just stopped tugging. Nobody collapsed. Nobody screamed. They just paused, like the idea of motion had been taken out of them. And beneath everything I felt it. A pressure, deep underground, like something had shifted in its sleep. When I finished, the man leaned in slightly. Good, he said. Then he dropped another tooth. The third night is when I started counting. 1 tooth, then 2, then 4. Each night, he came closer to my space before I even started playing. Each night the subway lights flickered earlier. Each night the silence lasted longer. And each night he asked the same thing. Play the song again. I tried to stop once. I packed up my violin and walked away early. I didn't make it past the stairs. I heard it before I saw him. My melody, being played somewhere behind me. Not by me. I turned around. No one was there. But the sound was unmistakable. my own music echoing through the tunnels, coming from deeper underground. That night, I found 3 teeth in my pocket, even though I never let him near me. That's when I started paying attention to the commuters. People were missing things. Not physically. Not at first. Just small details. A man forgot his daughter's name while waiting for the train. A woman stared at the map for too long, like she didn't recognize what a station was. Someone asked me what year it was and didn't understand my answer. The subway itself felt thinner, like it was becoming a skin stretched over something too large underneath. I went to the station manager, tried to explain. He listened politely, then asked if I was feeling okay. That was the moment I realized nobody else was seeing it, except me and the man. On the 5th night, I refused to play. I stood there with my violin in my hands and said no. He didn't react. He just placed a full handful of teeth into my cup. Dozens. Then he said something different. For the first time, not a request, a correction. You will play when it opens. My fingers went cold. What opens? He looked past me, not at the station. Past it, past the ground. And for a second, I swear the concrete beneath my feet felt hollow, like something vast was breathing under it. Then the lights flickered hard, and I started playing. Not because I wanted to, because my body did it without asking me. This time the effect was immediate. People stopped completely, not just slowing down, stopping, like the entire station had been paused in time. The air grew heavy, and from somewhere deep below the tracks, I heard something move. Not footsteps, something larger, dragging itself closer. The man finally stepped fully into my light, and I saw it clearly. He wasn't holding teeth. He was collecting them, like currency, like payment. He nodded once, almost open. That's when I understood. The song wasn't for people. It never was. It was for whatever was down there. Something old enough that sound itself meant invitation. Something that didn't travel through doors, only through rhythm, through music, through me. I stopped playing mid-note. The silence that followed felt like the world inhaling. And for the first time, the man looked disappointed. The commuters started moving again, confused, blinking, shaking their heads like they had just woken up. But the station didn't feel normal anymore. The tunnel lights didn't stop flickering, and from deep below, something responded anyway. Even without the full song, a low vibration through the floor, like it had heard enough. I ran. I left the violin behind. I didn't go back for it. I changed stations, changed routes, tried not to think about music at all. But sometimes late at night, when trains pass under my building, I hear it. Faint, distant, my melody. And sometimes, just sometimes, I feel something under the city shifting closer to the surface. Like it's still listening, still waiting for the full song to be played again.